Hi CFI and Future for your CFI. My name is Priya. Welcome to my videos. The reason I'm making this video is when I was working on my lesson plans, which probably you are, I couldn't find a lot of videos for fundamentals of instruction except task A. So I thought it took me a lot of time to read the fundamental of instruction, which is really good, but I didn't know what I'm getting in without having general idea. So my intention to give you general idea about each lesson, and hopefully it inspire you to go and read the book. It's really good. So today the lesson we're going to talk about, task C of fundamental of instruction, is the teaching process. So the objective of today's lesson is for the CFI candidates to know elements related to teaching process as described in PTS. There are 5 elements. I will talk about it one by one. Okay, so we all are pilot, but if you are a good pilot, does that make you a good instructor? Probably not. It takes another skill to be able to teach effectively. So the book, it says 4 skill. One is people skill. People skill is the way you talk, the way you communicate, the way you teach. The second skill, it's subject matter expert. In order to teach something, you should know. So before we start teaching, we should do our homework, to do our research and come back and teach. The third one is the management or organization skill. You should be a good organizer. You should be able to plan. You should be able to lead the group or lead the student and its progress. You should be able to assess the progress of the student. So you should have assessment skill too in order to get to the desired goal. So the first one, in order to teach effectively, you should have prepared a lesson plan. And how do you make lesson plan? Is you should know what should be the outcome of the lesson. What is your objective? So you should have a clear objective. You should write down the clear objective. The objective can be a performance-based or decision-based. First, you can focus only on performance-based, but as the student progress, you can focus on decision-based objective. When you write the objective, anybody who's reading should understand what do you mean by this objective. What are the skills are required? What is your end goal of your lesson? Then you would have a description of the skill which you are going to teach or behavior. So the description should be concretely written, not just aware of certain skill. You should write, the student should be able to perform task A, B, C, all the steps. Concretely written all the steps, not just a knowledge of certain things, but everything written clearly, clear steps and precise steps. Then we should also be able to, we should decide the condition, the rules under which you are going to teach the skill. So the rules can be weather related or tools related. So what tools are available to teach that skill? Airplane or just chair flight? Whether you would have sectional chart for your cross country or navigation tools or GPS. So you should write clear rules and condition where you're going to teach that lesson. The fourth one is criteria. So as an instructor, you should write standards. For example, standards described in PTS. 100 feet plus or minus desired altitude, 10 degree plus or minus desired heading, or 5 minutes plus or minus from desired ETA. So you should have confirmed standards, criteria when you make the lesson. So you have the desired goal. Once you do that, now we have the second point is organization of the lesson. Once we determine the objective of the lesson, and the standards. Now we should gather your material, put them in building blocks, relate to the points, relate all your elements towards or your material towards the objective. And the way you start, how do you start? So you start with the building block process. So the first one, you just introduce. What are you going to talk about? And how do you introduce? We can start with the attention grabbing story, a joke, a video, your own experience. So once you do that, then also once they start listening to you, once you get the students' attention, then you start with the motivation. Why you need to learn certain things, why you need to learn what you're going to teach today, how it's going to help them, how it's going to keep them safe. So you need to motivate your student to keep them interested. The third thing, you give them an overview, a general overview, what are we going to teach, or what elements or what areas you're going to cover in today's lesson, and how much time it might take. Then it's very important, after you do the introduction, is development. That is the main core of your lesson. So here you give them precise steps, the strong steps. You progress your material from past to present, or you can go from present to past if you're talking about the history of the Navads or something like that. From simple things to complex things, from known to unknown, then things they know to things they don't know, then from regularly used practice to least used practice, then simple to complex. Then once you do that, once you do the development of the lesson, you talk about conclusion. So conclusion is basically a review and summary of all the ideas in the thought that will help student to retain better. Okay, so we talk about the second, organization of the material. Okay, so I will just repeat. The first one was preparation of the lesson, where you talk about objective and standard, you talk about description, then you talk about condition, then you talk about criteria. Then the second point is organization of material. You just organize in building blocks, how you're going to present, how you're going to develop. So you start with introduction, attention, motivation, overview. Then you start the development of the lesson from simple to complex, past to present, from known to unknown, from frequently used to least used, and from simple to complex. Then you talk about conclusion. Okay, that's how you organize your lesson plan. Then third point is training delivery method. So FAA mentions 5 different way of training delivery method. How you're going to teach. There is a lot of way you can teach. One, you can give lecture. Second, you can have a discussion. Third, you can have, for like pilot and skill, you can demonstrate, and student will demonstrate, and the student will just copy you. Then drill and practice, and computer-based learning. So what is lecture method? Lecture method is just you talk, you give general idea to the student. Here student is not actively learning but passively learning. Student will not participate in the learning. So you will have very limited knowledge or idea how much understanding is happening, how much actual learning is happening. So in lecture method, you have to pay attention to the body language of the student. Is the student making notes? Is he sleeping? Is it not looking, making eye contact? Is he enthusiastic, or he looks bored? So then you will know your lecture is going in right direction. Is it effective? You can put meaningful examples to make your lecture interesting. Also, Use simple language, not complicated words when you're giving lecture, because student might not have an opportunity to ask you so many questions to interrupt. Lecture method you can give to a lot of students at once. It help you to give general idea, as I said. Okay. Then the second method is guided discussion. This is really good method of teaching. Here, instructor keeps control of the discussion, but he will start the discussion by asking a question, overhead question or a lead question. Then he can ask the follow-up question. So the objective of the guided discussion is for the instructor to know how well student understands certain areas. So instructor can ask many questions like overhead question, which can be asked to any student. Rhetorical question is just to begin the discussion, it's not for the answer. Then direct question can be asked to any student. Then there is a reverse question. If a student asks you a question, rather than giving the answer, you ask a question to the same student so they can answer. Then you can have a relay question. So if a student asks you a question, rather you answering the question, you relay that question to another student and let the other student have an opportunity to answer that question. The third one is computer assisted learning. So today, of course, we all know the technology. We can, it's a blessing. We can use the technology, videos. We can use the material, the online, the website, and there's a lot of knowledge around you. We can help students to learn the knowledge at their pace. If they did not understand, they can go back and relearn something by the help of the internet and computer. But we, as an instructor, we guide the progress, and we don't want them to know a lot of things, but we guide what is needed to learn or achieve the goal. And then the fourth one is the demonstration performance method. Demonstration performance method is an instructor demonstrate and student try to reproduce the same skill. It is very well needed or helpful for teaching piloting skill or maintaining school. So here we have 4 phases. First is explanation phase. In this phase, instructor will give the precise steps and brief explanation about what is needed, what is the goal of the skill, what they're going to learn. They will give all the steps and why are we doing, how we're going to do. Here, if student have any question, student should ask, and instructor should encourage student to ask question if they don't understand anything before going to the next phase. The next phase is demonstration phase. Here, the instructor will perform each steps as he explained in explanation steps to achieve certain skill. In this phase, if the instructor has to do any different than he said before, then he immediately tell why there is a variation, why we are doing the steps different than the explanation steps to avoid confusion. Then the third one is student perform and instructor supervise. So in this step, the student will actually get an opportunity to be on the control with the instructor if you want to do that. Student will get time to practice, and wherever he's lacking, the instructor will teach them how to correct it. He will not be able to do correct at the first time, but the practice will help, and the correction from the instructor will help student to perform better. It's student perform and instructor supervise. Then the fourth phase is the evaluation phase. Here, student will be independently doing the skill without instructor's help, but instructor will assess how the skill is performed. Are the standards met? Is he really understood what he's supposed to do? And if there's any and also instructor will know how effective his teaching was. So if there is any changes he needed to do. So the last one is evaluation stage. The fifth one is drill and practice. Of course, the more you practice, the more you learn better. So every crosswind probably would be different. So we drill and practice to the skill, to have better retention, to have better understanding. Okay, that was the 5 different steps of teaching process. The one is lecture method, guided discussion method, then computer assisted learning method, demonstration and performance method, and drill and practice method. The 4th one is problem based learning. In order to give the higher order thinking skill, to develop real world scenario skill, critical thinking, it is important to give students scenarios which encourage them to make decisions. So it is very important for learning. You create certain, create certain scenarios for a student, like low fuel, engine failure scenarios, and that will help student to be prepared for unexpected situation and still be calm and stress and to be able to perform. So there are 2 methods. Is the collaborative problem solving method. Collaborative problem solving method is 2 or more students can work on the same problem on the scenario to find a solution. There's not one right answer. There can be many answers. There's no one right or wrong answer. But how decision you make, what is your critical thinking, logical thinking to come out of the scenario. Okay. Another thing is, another method is a case study method. As an instructor, you take some cases happened in past, maybe from NTSB website, they have over 140,000 cases, and you explain the case, the mistakes, and let the student understand and assess the case, and let them say how the case should have been avoided, and learn from their mistakes. So that is the case study method, which is really good for higher order thinking skill and aeronautical decision making skill. Also, now the 5th one is, the last one is instruction aids and training technology. So when you're trying to teach student without any tools or aids, that may not help student to retain good. But if you show the models, show the images, show the graphs, show the videos, tools, pictures, or just the replicas, that will help student to retain it better. So the instruction, you can draw the diagram on the board. So board, markers, your graphs, computer, video, sectional charts, AFD, models. This can all be your training aids, which help students to understand and retain the knowledge. Thank you for watching.